welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have been very, very important in making that history, and some that continue to make history this very day. We're very excited to bring you our history tape number 480. And we're taping this on January the 28th, 2003, and going to play it in February during Black History Month. And we are really excited that we have gotten this lady by the arm and brought her into the studio somewhat reluctantly. And Barbara Wright, we are very delighted to have you here today, my dear.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Miss Barbara, you're just so famous in Grand Prairie, Texas, and by the time this interview is over, everyone in Grand Prairie that watches our show is going to be excited, and especially the young people, to know that a person can be born a small baby and yet make a success of their life because they have a little while to get it all together, and you really have gotten it together.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. First of all, we want to establish you and find out about the real Barbara. And if you'd look out into your camera and tell us a little bit about Barbara, I'd like you to name your parents, and when you do, name your mother's maiden name, and if you have brothers or sisters, name them, please.
All right. I'm Barbara Wright. I was born in Grand Prairie in 1960. Been here all my life. My parents are Mr. and Mrs. John Henry Jefferson. My mother is Lucille Jefferson. Maiden name is Blewett. I do have 5 sisters. They all are in the area except for one. She's in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Would you name your sisters, please?
The oldest is Carolyn, and then of course there's Joyce, Vicky, and then I'm the 4th child. Then there's Sharon and Paula.
Okay, that is wonderful. And being born in Grand Prairie, Texas, what did your father do for a living?
My dad was a taxi driver as well as worked for Missouri Pacific, where he retired from there.
That is wonderful. And did your mother ever work out of the home? Did it take all of her time to raise these girls?
She didn't work out of the home. Having 6 children, she had to take care of us.
Yes, that was a busy life.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And are both of your parents still living?
My mom is still living.
Your mom is still living. Does she live in Grand Prairie, Texas?
She lives in Grand Prairie in the Dalworth area.
And you would give us her name now?
Miss Lucille Blewett Jefferson.
Oh, that is wonderful. Isn't it great to have your mom nearby?
Yes, it is.
That is great. All right. And now let's start out. If you were born in 1960, tell us the schools you've gone to, beginning with your elementary.
Oh, Lord, Ruthie. Let's see if I can remember back that far.
All right.
Elementary was at David Daniels.
Okay.
And then I moved on to Lee Middle School. Graduated from Grand Prairie High, the great Grand Prairie Gophers.
Yes, okay. Let's go back to David Daniels, and at that time it was David Daniels Elementary.
Yes, ma'am, it was.
All right. Now, starting out to school, and you're the 4th child that's come along.
Yes, ma'am.
And all of those other girls have really paved the way for you somewhat at David Daniels. So they knew the Jefferson girls, didn't they?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Yes, they really did. Well, tell me if you had some very exciting mentors or favorite teachers or favorite subjects at David Daniels.
I can remember my 3rd grade teacher being Glasgow Talley.
Mr. Talley.
Mr. Talley was my teacher, and I do remember my 4th grade teacher, Ernestine Trim.
Oh, yes.
She taught me math, and right today I'm where I am because she really instilled the math and money aspect.
That is wonderful, and she still lives in Grand Prairie, Texas, and is really involved in the new Grand Prairie News, and her husband writes for that, and he was also a retired teacher, so I think it's wonderful that you've had this kind of help coming along. And was math that favorite subject, or do you really have to work at it?
No, math was my favorite, still is.
And still is, math, okay. After David Daniels, and who was your principal?
Oh, Lord, I can't remember.
Oh, that's all right.
Well, I think Mr. Daniels
Mr. Daniels probably was.
might have been the principal.
Yes, Well, you didn't ever have to go to the principal's office.
No, so I didn't know who the principal was.
You didn't remember that.
All right.
Oh, that is good. And then on to Lee Middle School. Now, leaving your Dalworth community, that is tough. Did they bus you to Lee?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
You remember your bus driver?
Mr. Lee, Fred Lee.
Mr. Fred Lee.
Mr. Fred Lee was the
Okay.
bus driver.
And he picked up all the kids at Dalworth and took you to Lee. And when
Yes.
you first hit the campus at Lee, that's a pretty big place compared to Dalworth Elementary.
Yes,
how did
ma'am.
that grab you, Miss Barbara?
Well, I adapted fine.
Uh-huh.
The teachers were great, and again, I got into math and algebra and
And all the
just
good stuff.
enjoyed it.
Who was your favorite teacher at Lee? And of course, math's going to have to be your favorite subject. I can't play around with that one too much.
I'm trying to think of her name. Can't think of her name, but I was nominated as one of the Girls of the Month.
Oh, you
so
were?
that was a big honor.
That was a big honor. Okay, I'm going to have to put that down on your bio sheet, because if you were nominated as Girl of the Month, that is wonderful.
Thank you.
And when you finished at Lee, and then you transferred up to the great big Gopher High School.
That's right, Grand Prairie High.
It's the one that was it's on the hill. It was the new one, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and going over there to that, you took a lot of Lee folks with you, so that made it a lot easier transition, didn't
It did. It sure did.
Okay, and when you hit campus, tell me about hitting campus for the first time. At Grand
Well,
Prairie.
I was a freshman and a little scared, but I adapted there as well.
You adapted very well. Okay, and I would say your first encounter as a freshman, did you make some friends? Tell me how it was that first year.
I did make friends. Of course, I had a sister that was there. She was 3 years older. Vicky was there on campus.
Really
So
paved the way for you, didn't
yes,
she?
ma'am. So that helped.
Okay. Well, were you involved in anything other than math? Tell me some of the things you did in those 4 years you were a Gopher.
I got into quite a bit of the finance areas and worked in the work program, the distributive education,
Okay.
where I served as secretary and then vice president for a couple of years.
Okay. And where did you get any training outside of the school?
I actually started at, it was Midway National Bank at the time.
I've got to write that down. That's one of my favorite banks. Midway National. And that's that white building that looks kind of like a Taj Mahal there on Carrier
On
Parkway,
Carrier
near
Parkway.
the Kroger building.
That's
it's
correct.
now some other kind of bank, and we won't mention that other kind of bank.
No, we won't.
We won't talk about that one right now, but that was your bank, and you started right in that building
I started in that
as
building
a student.
as a student back in '77.
And who were you working for there? Can you remember any of the names of?
Mr. Walden and
Okay.
Jim Swafford and a couple of the bank officers. Mr. Murchison was there
Okay.
and Mr. Bridges.
Oh.
Lou Langford was one that was there.
And Lou helped you a lot, didn't she?
Oh, yes, she did. Mary Douthit was another one.
Oh, yes. I've got to put all these names down because all of those are important Grand Prairians, aren't they?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you worked there how long as a student? Until you graduated?
Until I graduated.
I think that was wonderful. What an experience you have had with Midway Bank. And then did you go through all of the transitions from Midway Bank to Republic Bank to the Republic Bank of Texas to the Republic of the World?
Yes,
and,
ma'am.
And then Nations Bank and then ABCD Bank and all of the steps that you've taken. Can you name all of the different ones starting at Midway?
It started at Midway,
Okay.
and then it was Republic, of course, First Republic, and then NCNB, and of course now it's
America?
Bank of America, but it was Nations, and there was a merger between Nations and Bank of America.
Okay. And you've been with them through all of that.
Yes, ma'am, I have.
You have the greatest history of probably almost anyone that's at that bank today. Is there anyone on site at the bank there on Carrier and Jefferson that have been through all of those transitions, such as you?
I'm actually the only one left.
You are the only living example. Yes, because Mr. Swafford is already retired from that
Right.
bank as the president, and he's now on the city council. And I don't know where Murchison is, but I know that Lou is retired.
Right.
And you just outlasted them all.
Don't know how, but I did.
All right. And at the bank now, your current title is?
I'm the banking center service manager as well as the assistant manager. I'm assistant vice president there.
Assistant Vice President. And you're going to name our new president at that bank.
Our new president is Maria Crouch.
And Maria commanded that I get in touch with you and says, make her come on the show, didn't she?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
Oh, she is such a vivacious new manager, and aren't you excited about this?
I'm very excited to have her.
But tell me about Jeffrey, who was before her, your manager before her. What's Jeffrey's last name?
Jeffrey Blasco.
Uh,
He was there for about 3 years.
and he was the one that gave me permission to ask you if you would come and do a history for us. So I have really had the confidence of two bank managers to help me get you on this show finally. And what did you start out as over at the Midway Bank when you were a student? What department were you in?
Really, it was filing checks and just processing proof work.
A lot of things that are done by automatic processing now.
That's correct.
Oh, isn't that exciting that
It
you have
is.
seen the transition and seen the bank grow in different ways?
Yes, ma'am.
And of all of the things that you've ever done for the bank, what is your very favorite job?
I love being a teller.
Yes.
'Cause I met people,
and talk with them?
and talk with them. So I really enjoyed being a teller.
Okay.
That was my
now,
favorite.
And being a teller, I would like to know what set the stage for your being able to make a delicious, wonderful trip after the snipers had finished doing bad things in Washington, D.C., to go to Washington, D.C. Tell me about your assignment. I heard some of it with the grapevine, but I want to get all of that on tape here because that sounded like a wonderful opportunity for a young lady.
Yes, ma'am, it was. Back in October, I was nominated from my regional to serve as field support for the D.C., Maryland area. They computed to a new computer system.
When they go into a new computer system, then you are the field person that goes and brings them up to speed?
Well, I was for this assignment. I was there for 2 weeks, and we had been on the computer system a couple of years already. So they needed someone experienced to go and train the other folks.
Bring them up to snuff.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that was really good.
It was
And you
such an
spent-
honor.
Oh, it's such an honor. I just think it's just really magnificent. No one's ever sent me to Washington to teach anybody anything. And I've been working here for 80 long years, and that is a great, great opportunity.
And I had never been to Washington, so it was a great honor.
Oh, and tell me what all you did besides teach all these people about computers and things and
Well-
banking. A little side trips. You must have had an opportunity to do
We
that.
did do some sightseeing. Of course, they wouldn't let us into the White House.
That's right.
But we
because there's
did tour,
restrictions.
and we went to Pentagon City, went to Gaithersburg, Maryland,
Yeah.
and just enjoyed ourselves.
That is really great. And spent 2 wonderful weeks.
2 full weeks.
And everybody at the bank was so jealous.
Yes, they were.
Yes, they were. Isn't that great? That
Yes.
is wonderful. Well, as they would say, you've come a long way, baby.
A
But
long
now,
way,
We
baby.
haven't finished with you. We've just gotten to, you passed your working at your bank. And I'd like to know, what is the most important thing between the time you went to work for the bank and now? I believe you've married since then, and we better make that important.
Yes, ma'am. I've been married for 22 years.
And you're going to give us your husband's name.
My husband is Jimmy Wright. He's from Louisiana, from a family of 17.
And could you give us his mother and father's name so we could put his bio on here?
His mom and dad are Jeffrey and Lillian Wright. His dad is deceased, but his mom is still living in Louisiana.
And where in Louisiana?
Lake Providence.
Lake Providence, Louisiana. And he came from a family of 17. Isn't that
17.
magnificent?
It's a lot of them.
Yeah, when you married him, you had to start saving money to buy Christmas presents for a whole bunch, didn't you?
Well, we drew names.
That really does help then. And and y'all have been married 22 years,
23 years.
23 years. How did you meet him?
Some of his family had moved here and attended the same church, and We met through our friends at the church.
Okay, now we're going to, now that we have you married, do you have any children?
I have one daughter. She's 13. Her name is Christina. Hi, Christina.
And Christina goes to school.
And she attends Truman Middle School.
Truman Middle School. And I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
And having been married for 23 years to Jimmy Wright, how does he understand you're going off to Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks and all of the work that you have to do on the extra things that are your responsibility through the bank?
I think he appreciates me more now after having to take care of Christina for those 2 weeks.
For those 2 weeks, he was the daddy mom, wasn't he?
He was everything, yes.
Uh-huh.
But he understands. He knows this position is very important to me, and he does support it.
Okay, and what does Jimmy do for a living?
He's a supervisor at a plastic company in Arlington.
We let him get away to Arlington. We should have gotten him a job here in Grand Prairie, Texas, shouldn't we? Well, I think that's wonderful. Okay, I need to know just a little bit more about what you're going to do when you grow up now, Barbara. You're doing all of this. When you ever retire from the banking business, do you have any goals?
I've actually reached the goal that I had for banking, which was to be the assistant manager, and I'm very satisfied in that position.
Oh, that's great. Now, we got to talk about your church.
Of course.
The pastor's going to be real mad if we don't talk about it. Where do you go to church, and what do you do in it, and just tell me something about your church life.
Okay, I attend Morning Star Baptist Church, where my pastor is Reverend C.L. Taylor, here in Grand Prairie.
He's a young man.
Yes, he is.
Good-looking young man.
Yes, he is. And I've been there pretty much all my life.
Yes.
I work in the finance room, of course.
Of course.
And I've been the church clerk, helped build the current facility that we have now.
Oh, yes, and it is really great, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Aren't you all proud of that?
We're very proud of it.
How many members do y'all have, prox now?
Oh,
A bunch.
gosh, a bunch.
A bunch,
A
yeah.
bunch.
Y'all have really grown.
Yes, ma'am, we
Especially
have.
in the last 3 or 4 years that I've noticed, and especially I've had Brother Taylor on my show.
Oh, good.
Oh, yes. He's an up-and-coming young man. He represented all of the ministers from Dalworth one time when I needed a panel,
Oh,
and no one showed up but him, and so we had the whole 30 minutes.
Oh,
We had a
good.
time together. Okay. Now, how about this historical business?
yes, ma'am.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Your family is historical in that sense, and when the historical organization, which is now the Grand Prairie South Dalworth Park Historical Society, and when you all were formed, they twisted your arm, Barbara.
Yes, ma'am, they did.
And what job did they give you in the historical group? As if I didn't know.
I am the treasurer of that group.
You're the treasurer. Oh, isn't it great?
Yes, it is.
Yes, and I just think it's wonderful. We have about 50 members already, and we've just been organized less than a year, haven't
Less
we?
than a year, yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And our new president is
It is Wesley Newt.
Wesley Newt. Now, we did have another president before that, but he got so busy into this world of life and making a living that I'm so glad that Wesley's our new president. And aren't we going to have a good time?
Yes, we will. We are.
Oh, and we have a real good nominating committee chairman. Now, that's Tommy Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Every time anybody looks like they're not working, she goes and asks them, so now, if you're not going to work and do your job, do you think we ought to replace you?
That's
And
right.
Don't you think that's pretty forward?
No, ma'am, she stays on top of it.
Oh, that is really great, isn't it? And
Yes, it is.
being the treasurer of the historical organization, have you got any money in the bank?
We do have some money in the
got
bank.
some money in the
But
bank.
we can always,
Always you.
Use
In other
more.
words, if there's anybody watching this show that would like to be a member, it doesn't cost very much to be a member. How much does it cost?
No,
$10
just-
a year.
$10 a year.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if they want to be a patron member, if they've got $500, we sure could use that, couldn't
Yes, we could.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we're going to research the history of Dalworth Park. The old city of Dalworth Park was organized in approximately in 1915, somewhere in that vicinity. Since Billy Powers is our past president of the Historical Organization of Grand Prairie is in our studio audience, we don't dare tell anything that's not right, do we?
That's right.
But just think how we can really go for doing the history of old Dalworth Park, the southern part of the city of Dalworth Park. And we got a lot to do, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yes, and we had one of our wonderful people in Dalworth, Trina, retired.
Trina James.
Trina
yes.
James retired and is not well.
Right, and we've started a contribution account for her.
Yes, and let's talk about that a little bit. Tell them where to send the money and everything to your bank and Trina James, and because I believe she has a heart condition.
Yes, she does.
Yes, she does.
We have a contribution account. Any Bank of America will accept donations, and it's in the name of Trina James. Contribution account for Trina James.
And Trina's not but about 30 plus, is she?
She's right at 40.
I think she's 37. They told us yesterday. We had her retirement reception at the Ruthie Jackson Center yesterday, and it was that was brought out that she had a heart condition. And so, thank you all at the bank for doing that good thing. Y'all do many good things for your bank, and so now we've gotten the historical and there's a church, but you've got to tell me. You never did tell me anything about what you want to do after banking.
After banking,
It's hard to
it's
realize
hard to
it.
imagine anything after banking. I have about 8 more years to go, so
You
I'll.
have 8 years to go.
Yes, ma'am.
And hopefully you're going to get to spend them all in the Grand Prairie, Texas area,
Yes.
unless they make you the president of something real important and move you to, where is your home office, in North Carolina or South
Right.
Carolina?
In Charlotte, I think I'll stay around here.
You would rather stay around here. Okay. What else do you do in your community other than church and banking and historical and whatever?
I'm also on the Grand Prairie Arts Council, where we have the plays every year, of course, and I support that role as well as treasurer.
Oh, and you're the treasurer of the Arts Council.
Yes,
Well, I
ma'am.
should have known that. And are you gifted in any way toward being in any of their plays or
No.
presentations? Or do you have an artistic talent maybe to write poetry or anything?
No, I sure don't. I just like to attend the plays and give them the support.
You're just into math and all of this good stuff, aren't you? Okay. I need to talk with you just a little bit more about Grand Prairie High School. Are you a member of the Grand Prairie High School Alumni Association?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh dear, we're always looking for a treasurer. The Grand Prairie High School Alumni Association has been organized for about 11 years, and Mr. Kim Thorne is our president. And Angela Gessner is going to be our president beginning in just a few weeks. And so we'll have to pass the word around that we have a wonderful Grand Prairie High School X that really would be important if you had an opportunity to work with the Grand Prairie High School Alumni Association.
Sure. I've
And-
worked with Angela before.
Yes, well now see, because she worked at the bank with you before,
She
didn't
did.
she? Before she
did.
became into insurance. And just think what it would mean if you could work on her team one more time, and we'll have to pass that word along. And the Alumni Association is really great because we give scholarships, we raise money for scholarships, and anyone that joins our Alumni Association and pays $100 for a life membership, we put that into the scholarship trust.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And last year, we gave 6 $1,000 scholarships to Grand Prairie High School students.
Wonderful.
And so that's going to give you an opportunity and a new field to look at. And I need to check with Paul and see how much time we have left. We have 6 minutes. I want you to look out into your camera, and I want you to talk to the young people for a long time and just tell them how important it is for them to study, and if they're going to be successful, it doesn't just happen, and tell them how hard you had to work and for how long. Would you do that for me?
I
Barbara?
sure will. I guess being from a family of 6 girls, it all started at home with Dad. Dad made sure that you did your homework, and he also had you repeat your timetables. I guess that's why math is so important to me.
Yes.
And raising a young child, I've also instilled those values in her to study hard. It all begins at home. The schools can only do so much, but it does start at home. And of course, church is always important. Just obey your parents and do what you know is the right thing to do.
And of all of the things that you've done, is there any of it that you would have done a different way, Barbara?
No, ma'am. I think everything that has happened, I wouldn't take for it.
It's been just a real wonderful experience.
Yes, it has.
Okay, well, you and I are going to just sit here and talk to each other about the things that we need to do for Grand Prairie, Texas. Are you on any boards or commissions for the city of Grand Prairie?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
Have you ever filled out one of their famous applications to serve on a board or a commission for the city?
No,
of
I
Grand Prairie?
haven't given that thought.
Yes. Well, now, isn't that strange that we would bring that up? I'm trying to find you some more jobs as if you didn't have
As
enough
if I don't have enough.
to do already. But the city of Grand Prairie, Texas has a marvelous opportunity. We have I think about 20 boards, and you have a choice. And you can go to the city secretary at City Hall, and that is on Northwest 3rd and College Street. And if you'll go and see the city secretary and tell her you need one of those applications, it also gives you a list of the different boards and commissions that you could make a choice. And you could find one of those that would just be delicious for you and give a little bit of time to your city in that way. And I think you would really enjoy that. And who knows, one of these days you might want to become the person that represents your district, or the person that represents the city of Grand Prairie at large, or someone that would want to be the mayor, the first African-American mayor of the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. And just think, you might have gotten your start on this show. To put that into motion.
I'll have to check that out, Ruthie.
Would you be interested in serving your city in some way?
Yes, I would.
Yes, you would. Well, I know that you have, because with the Arts Council and the historical group and your church and all of the other things that you've done, you've led a remarkable life. And
Thank you.
I would like very much for you to take Jimmy back a note and say, Jimmy, if you had been on this show, we wouldn't have to pressed you into becoming a member of the city council or to be on the alumni association or some of these other things. But I would like for you to look out into your camera now and just tell us how exciting it's been to have a life in Grand Prairie, Texas, because of your family and other things you've enjoyed.
It has been very exciting living here and working in Grand Prairie. I've enjoyed being in the city, and I love it here.
And would you recommend it to some of your other friends that live out of the city?
Yes, I would. Grand Prairie is a great place to live.
It
And
is.
with Miss Ruthie Jackson on your side, you've got it made.
All right, now tell me just a little bit about your young daughter that is at Truman. And she's just getting to the age of going out with boys.
No, not
Not
yet.
yet?
That's a few years away.
How many years away?
A few years
And
away.
is she already setting her sights on what she wants to be when she grows up?
She plays the clarinet right now. She's been doing that for 2 years. And we're just going to keep her active
In school?
in school.
Does she have a favorite subject that is she interested in, math or anything?
Oh, unfortunately, she's not interested in math. We do struggle there, but
But there are
we're
other
working
things,
on it.
But she really likes playing in the band.
She's enjoying it.
Okay, all right. Well, you've been a good mom.
Thank
and,
you.
And doing all the things just right. And in the 1 minute we have left, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Barbara. I know that this was against your better judgment, but when the young people, and especially of the black community, see that a young lady has come a long way, just from a beginning, a normal beginning in Dalworth, in Old Dalworth Park to be exact.
Right.
And you've followed your parents' rules, and you've just been wonderful.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you for
being
having me
here.
here.
You bet. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.